Okay, wow. I never thought I'd be making this video. I genuinely didn't see this coming, and honestly, I'm not sure I'm fully ready to say goodbye to Seattle, despite my many gripes that I'm going to get to, but I'm also going to get to what I'm excited for that's ahead. And I do want to be clear, this is not a bash Seattle video. In fact, I hope it comes off as a love letter to Seattle because, like I said, this is not what I expected, nor honestly what we wanted when we began this process of looking for a house 7 or 8 months ago. This also isn't a rant about how bad the housing market is because there are plenty of videos out there about that. In fact, a few months back, I did detail out a video about our struggles to buy, but I decided not to make that video because I didn't think it was adding anything constructive to the mix. Plus, I didn't want to film until we had a happy ending. That said, I will start with housing, but keep it brief because it does set the stage for what's next. Because what's next is obviously imminent based on that empty bookshelf behind me. I'm filming this on Wednesday and we move out on Friday. Holy crap. 3/4 of our lives are in boxes in a closet right over here and in our storage unit downstairs. And it's definitely hitting me that this is real. So this now feels like the perfect time to reflect. But before I go on, my name is Frankie. I put out videos weekly on all things personal finance and financial independence and even early retirement. I'm here with tips, advice, and how-tos, and obviously even personal stories in my journey to FI. So subscribe if you're up for any and all of that in the future. Let's be friends, yeah? Because I don't think I have very many where I'm going next. Okay, housing and house hunting. Yes, we failed at buying a house here in Seattle and we tried really, really hard. We had to get fully pre-approved twice this year because the first one expired after 4 months. And like I hinted at, yes, we lived the horror stories you've probably read about with potential home buyers getting beat out on offer after offer by $100,000 to $200,000 consistently, oftentimes up against all cash offers. That's despite including an escalation clause with our offers, which usually went $100,000 above asking, easily over $50,000 more than we originally planned at the max of our budget. And at the time, missing out on house after house was heartbreaking. But what's funny is looking back at every single one of those houses, we now look at each other and we can confidently say, thank God we didn't get that one, especially at that price. And it's because what we wanted changed and evolved as we hunted and offered. Plus, of course, we're extremely excited about how it eventually all shook out. Originally, we thought we were okay with a townhouse, maybe even a condo if it was in a super awesome neighborhood, kind of like the one we rent in now in the sort of Fremont, Wallingford neighborhood. We thought 1,500 plus square feet, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, that would be enough. And it wasn't until about 5 months into our aggressive hunt, and I do mean aggressive, we probably toured close to 100 homes in that time frame, when we finally had a heart-to-heart with one another. We sat down and came to the realization that we only wanted a single family home with a fully fenced backyard for the dog. And we actually wanted it to be 2,000 plus square feet and friendly for hosting. And we ideally did need a 4th bedroom to future-proof it, especially because we both currently work from home. And that's important for any of you looking. You can and likely will change your mind, so don't be in a hurry. Plus, it's okay to be picky. The right house will eventually find you. We also realized the pain of looking and losing out big in Seattle was starting to take a toll, and we might not get into any house for another year at this point, so it was time to look beyond. Plus, of course, we'd have to forgo our non-negotiables to stay in Seattle. Was Seattle worth settling for? So, where to look? Every direction, of course. We decided we were willing to go as far as 25 minutes north, anywhere from here to the shoreline area. West Seattle is also very much up and coming, and it's basically its own city 30 minutes away, and that's only because the bridge is currently closed indefinitely, making it slightly more, though, affordable now. To the east, we'd be thrilled to end up in Kirkland, where my wife grew up and her family currently is. That's about 20 minutes away, and we'd also look just north of Kirkland in Totem Lake or maybe even the Juanita area. And to the south, we'd at least give Tacoma a look. It's just 45 minutes away, and it's where I grew up and where my family currently is. So As we started looking and exploring new options in cities and neighborhoods, we both quickly started coming to terms with the reality we were leaving Seattle. And that was actually just a few months ago. Actually, right before we left on our honeymoon in mid-September, we toured a house in the neighborhood or city that we ended up in, and we fell in love with it. But there was one massive problem. We were going to be out of the country during closing, and that wasn't going to work. So sadly, we moved on emotionally. We forgot about that house during our entire trip and thought, let's just see how we feel about everything when we get back and regroup. The truth is, I wanted to be in our first home before September when the wedding was. We were even willing at the time to skip a honeymoon because we wanted it that bad. I even put up a poll here on YouTube asking if we should buy a house or go on a honeymoon, and I loved the responses. Obviously, most people said house, and actually a lot of people said do both. We booked a trip making sure it was 90% refundable, and we kept at it, but we failed to buy a house. And when we found a house that we loved, it was indeed too late to cancel that trip. And I'll never forget the day we got back. It was pouring rain and dark outside coming home in our Uber. The leaves had started to fall, and nobody was outside, even though it was a Friday night, which seemed kind of odd and eerie. We walked back into our apartment, this apartment, and I instantly looked at my now very tan new wife, and I said, I'm ready to leave. She probably thought I meant this specific apartment because of the emotions tied to it that we've both been talking about, but I meant Seattle. And now it's pros and cons of Seattle time, but I will go through this quickly. And by the way, making a pros and cons list was a really good exercise that I did when we were actually deciding whether or not to offer on a house that we really liked. It was super helpful, and I do recommend it. Let's start with the cons. Now, most of them are obvious, and not all of these are specific to Seattle, but they are specific to big cities, I would say, in general. Number one, of course, homelessness and crime. Homelessness is bad and has gotten much worse since the pandemic. I actually had friends buy and sell a house in less than a year because of the issues with homelessness in their new neighborhood. They eventually left Seattle. Traffic and potholes. Now, traffic is obvious, but most people don't complain about potholes, but I do ride a Vespa daily, so kind of annoying. We now have lots of bridge and even highway tolls, and by the way, they aren't cheap, especially some of the new ones. The people here, okay, they have a reputation for not being super friendly. Many do complain about this thing called the Seattle freeze. I'll say this about Seattle people. We're not super outgoing, but we're very friendly if you approach us. Anyway, the overall cost of living is high and getting out of control for simple things like gas, car registration, beer at a hockey game, which is $18, and I wish I was lying. The grocery store runs keep creeping up, and then also, of course, just rent. There's, of course, construction and just overall noise pollution. It's a game to see how many cranes you can count from any given location in Seattle. And finally, honestly, just most of my friends have already left. They moved for a job or they got married and had kids and probably went through everything I'm talking about years ago. But obviously, Seattle has its major pros, or I would have left a long time ago. Where I live, I'm just blocks from just about anything, from amazing parks to grocery stores to a dozen breweries and bars. Our favorite restaurant is actually walkable, and the views from like a block away are spectacular of Lake Union. The overall energy here is amazing, especially on game day, because we live about 1.5 miles from the University of Washington. Then there's the just beauty and history that I've become super fond of as I've learned about it. For example, did you know Seattle once burned down and they rebuilt on top of the old rubble in Pioneer Square with the original buildings still below, which you can tour. It's super cool. Seattle is freaking fun, from sports to concerts to theater to comedy open mics to art galleries, you name it, you can do it here. The location, it's unprecedented. Seattle is close to mountains, lakes, the Puget Sound, of course, hikes, Canada up north, amazing universities. It's just a short drive to Portland or even the coast. There just truly is nothing like it geographically. Though pricey, we do have great transportation like the newly expanded light rail and nearby airport. And this one's personal, but Seattle is nostalgic for me, which I'm gonna get to here in a moment. Funny enough with this exercise, I always assumed there were so many more pros than cons, but when I sat down to come up with that list, there were actually a lot more cons than I expected, and the final list came out to close to 50-50. And if you're 50-50 on anything in life, perhaps that's a sign that it isn't right. It should be a hell yes or a hell no. From where you work to where you live to who you date to hobbies to adopting a pet to even leaving the house on a Friday night. I used to have these things called Frankie Fridays because sometimes we all need a little time to unwind, especially in big, loud, expensive cities. But look, the reality is no matter the list in the head when it comes to decisions, especially big decisions in life, it's definitely the heart that speaks the loudest. That's why I always thought, no matter what, I'm never leaving Seattle. But at the end of the day, it no longer made any kind of financial sense, and we're ready for new and excited about what's ahead. We want a home that doesn't feel temporary or what they call a starter home. And I'll say this, family tugs at the heart far more than any city or neighborhood. But my God, I'm gonna miss it here. I spent 14 of my 36 years on earth here. I lived in 5 different neighborhoods. I went to undergrad and grad school at UW, the first in my family to do so. I made lifelong friends and memories I'll definitely never forget. I counted 10 different jobs if I'm counting the college years. I coached sports and played on a bunch of teams myself here. I marched in parades and rallied to save our Sonics, which of course didn't work. I introduced Seattle to out-of-towners, and I also suffered tragedy and loss here. I got sick and broke bones here. I also got raises and promotions here. I remember my car was totaled just a block away from where I'm sitting, and then I got my motorcycle license here. I learned new skills and took risks here. I self-quarantined for almost a year here. I adopted a dog here, but most of all, I fell in love and got married here, and now she is home, which is true no matter where we go. And finally, I set my money resolution here. I went broke because of Seattle, and then I turned my financial life around after teaching myself money from scratch. And I gained the courage to put myself out there and write a book, then start this YouTube channel and write another book, and I'm almost done with my 3rd. I side hustled and I shared all the ups and downs transparently here. I set goals like making 100 videos this year, and I showed up every day and every week when I discovered this passion for personal finance. And this is actually video 180 in this building, 140 in this specific apartment in the last 2.5 years. All right, so what's next? What's ahead? Well, after our honeymoon, we offered on 3 houses in a span of 2 weeks before, I can't tell you what happened just yet. You're gonna have to keep watching, of course. That, my friends, is for a different day and a different video. And I'm really sorry for the tease and lack of reveal here, but I didn't want this video to be all about the decision and process. I wanted this to just be a goodbye and an optimistic, open-ended hello to what's next. This is all why I'm leaving, how it feels, and a snapshot in time that I won't ever forget. But fear not, I absolutely will reveal where we ended up, if we bought a house or decided to do something crazy and unexpected, what it all cost, how we paid for it maybe, how we're feeling 1 month from now, 6 months from now, 1 year from now, and I'd be thrilled to have you come along for the ride. Subscribe if you haven't and you want to see what's ahead, and like this video if you appreciate this perspective and open, honest thoughts about struggle, moving on, and hopefully success and a happily ever after. And for fun, let me leave you with this. Don't be scared of new and different. Approach life with an open mind. Find a way to balance the head and the heart. Appreciate the sounds and gardens. Keep life fresh, and ma'am or sir, mix it up a lot with a new location and a new postal service. It might help you discover nirvana. Seattle, you're a pearl. Jam on. My city's filthy. To the max and more. Let me know if you see what I did there. Thank you, Seattle, and good night. Here's a hint. I give you a standing O, and who knows, maybe someday an encore. And thank you for watching. And tell me, what did you think about this whole process I went through? Have you also gone through the horrors of trying to buy your first house? Do you relate to this situation? Do you have any thoughts or questions about Seattle? I do try to reply to everyone, so please do drop me a note in the comments. Again, like if you liked, subscribe if you loved, and I hope to see you awesome people in a few days on the next one. And next week, you'll see me in a new place and room. Wish me luck. Thanks. And now you know why I've been making YouTube shorts on weekends instead of my typical 2 full videos a week. House hunting is practically a full-time job, am I right? Secretly though, I am gonna miss that whole process as well. See ya.